Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Another great week, Nebraska Preps Postgame. Anytime I get to hear JP, that means I'm next to him. We're talking hoops, talking about all things. We could have our very own off the pod show. That would be very entertaining. we like all basketball. I didn't even broach the topic of the NBA, which is what I usually always like to talk to you about. So it's like, hey.
In a better place now than when I was the last time we discussed.
Hey, but and you know what? They're starting to look like the Phoenix Suns team. Health matters.
Well, yeah, they're starting to get their actual NBA players back. We're not starting Dwayne Washington Jr. anymore.
Oh, I put the quarter in, and my man is ready to go. As we almost dabbled in a little NBA. And listen, you staved off a scrappy Raptors team who is still waiting on Anunoby, who looks like it's going to be another week maybe before he comes back.
4 more games. They said they were going to at least.
Yeah. Are you happy with where you think you're capable of being?
Yes, I still like. They're going to have to make a trade to give themselves a better shot. Like we've seen, probably don't have enough, but I just don't know if that's going to materialize with James Jones and the way that he's operated to this point. But at the very least, I'll be happy to get a competitive team back that's fun to watch. Booker's getting closer, starting to do some stuff. So, yeah.
Still all in on Aiden in that contract?
No.
It is almost February.
Yeah.
No.
Let's not talk about Aiden. Let's talk about high school basketball. That's what we're here for.
I wanted to know. All right, so let's jump right in. A very uneventful week for Class A's number 1 Bellevue West Thunderbirds, whose schedule has subsided a little, but they'll get right back to it, taking on East in a little cross. Do we call Sioux City cross state still? Cross town? Let's go town.
I mean, yeah, it's like it's up north there.
Yeah,
and like it's a 2-hour drive.
What are we just taking 75 over to 29? Is that what it is? They have a tilt, but
2 undefeated teams, 16-0 versus 18-0.
Uneventful past week for the T-Birds.
Yeah, but yeah, they had one game, took care of business against Central. They were up 52-25 through 3 quarters. Ended up winning by 25 there. So, and again, it's just Jane Jackson played well again, but as they've done recently, it's just kind of a little bit everybody else because the team is so good, the defense is so good. They don't need anybody in particular to take a bunch of shots. It's just a few guys. Josiah Doser had 10, Robbie Garcia had 12 and 8. Jackson at 18, just kind of a little bit from everybody. And then you hold Central to 2 of 13 from 3.
Kind of this game right on time, do you think, to keep complacency from setting in with this Bellevue West team as you kind of get a different and new opponent?
Well, and yeah, I'm sure they liked having just a 1 game and then a lot of time to work on themselves because they got a 3-game week this week. So you start with the Sioux City East, Battle of Unbeatens. Then they host Creighton Prep on Friday, a rematch for the Metro Final. And then they host Pius X on Saturday, who's been
it's reeling a little bit. Or Pius X. Yes. I was thinking Scott. Yeah, Pius X is starting to get it together as Trace Anderson and company figuring it out. But and we'll get to Lincoln here in a second. But nobody is hot as. How about this for ominous foreshadowing? I couldn't convince you last week about the personnel in Lincoln. I was leaning more towards Southwest. You stuck firm and said, I'm kind of leaning a little Lincoln Southeast. And all Southeast has done, JP, is win 6 in a row.
Yeah. And big win on Tuesday. Southeast, after they believe they were 5-6 before that winning streak, now sitting at 11-6 and number 7 in the NEB Preps coaches poll. Big week. They had 1 test and then two of the lower teams that they faced this past week, but took care of business. They got Norfolk on Thursday this week and then Prep on Saturday. So another chance to really prove themselves like they did against East, where they won that thing 60-41. And again, it's balanced. Like they their leading scorer at 13 points. Bengal Dak had 13 points, 13 boards, 3 blocks. They got 12 from Tate Moore, 11 from BJ Bradford, 8 and 7 boards from Wade Voss, 8.6 rebounds from Jake Hilkeman. So just a little bit from everybody. And that's kind of what they're settling into. Like they still, I don't think any individual player has quite gotten really into a consistent rhythm where like, all right, this guy's playing super well right now, but they've got that whole starting 5. Like any of those guys can play really well in a given game. And then they've got a few guys off the bench that can play as well. So that's kind of during this winning streak. Like that's probably their most impressive win to this point. Cause I think, especially with the way that East bounced back and took care of business against Southwest.
That was I felt like that was a big timely win.
Oh yeah. So East is at 5 right now. They're 11-4. They bounced back from that 41-60 loss where the team shot 4-24 from 3. And we talked about the two Carters, Carter Mick and Carter Templemeyer, combined 12 points on 3 of 21 from the field. They're never going to win when that happens, but bounce back 75-59 at Lincoln Southwest wasn't even a down to the wires. Like they controlled that game. Carter Mick had 17 points, 7 assists. Carter Templemeyer. Yeah, Carter 12 points, 12, 9, and 5. Like so that they got good contributions from those two. Jared Townley, 16 points, 7 boards, 5 assists. Shot 9 and 21 from 3, so they bounced back. And then they go to or they host Elkhorn South on Saturday, 63-55 win. Tough weekend for the Storm there with some of the matchups. But
watched the first half against Millard North because I watched obviously the girls' game ahead of time and then had the toughie. So that one was, I think that was a 53-47 final, and then they turned around and lost Saturday 63-55.
Yep.
So it's almost like vintage Elkhorn South when they had the number 9 ranking heading into last week, where not flashy enough to give you a headache. They do a really good job with scout, but really looking for signature victories at this point.
Yeah. Carter Templemeyer 26 in that game on 8 of 13 shooting, 7 of 8 from the line, just too much for them to keep up with. But
points can be hard to come by for that Storm bunch sometimes.
And
they went into the lull against Millard North too.
Exactly right. So Elkhorn South, they weren't really penalized for the tough week though. They took care of business against Omaha Westview. Alec Noonan at 31 in that game, and then had the 2 tough losses against top 5 teams at Millard North and Lincoln East. So
quietly, he's one of my favorites. It's primarily because Shane, not to go all Tom Petty here, he just doesn't back down.
Yeah,
he's competitive. He's fierce. It's not always aesthetically pleasing, but he battles, and he's worked on his handle a little bit. He's starting to find ways to get downhill.
I think
Damon,
yes,
you can go all Tom Petty if you want to.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Glad we got Shane's permission
Won't back down.
But yeah, and like his performance in the Metro tournament, like that's one of the most impressive individual performances considering what was going on around him, the defense it was against. Like they had best defenders on him, and he was going to town. So like that's. But again, Elkhorn South's in there at number 9 in the rankings. Coaches didn't penalize them for those losses. They're sitting there at 10-5, still above still a solid record there. And they're healthier now. They got Gavin Hornbacher kind of working his way back in the lineup.
Good call there.
Good glue guy for them, just physical. For an undersized team, you got to have a guy that plays bigger than he is, and that's Gavin. So that was, we'll see. They've got Westside on Friday and Omaha Central on Saturday. So another tough week, but a chance to score some wins against quality teams there.
As we kind of back up a little bit, go back to number 2 Gretna, who just keeps keeping on, right? Handled Omaha Northwest early, scored 79 points, which isn't really the story. It was the 27 they scored in the first quarter and 25 in the second quarter, which if you let this team be that efficient scoring the basketball, they're going to defend. That is a very, very good defensive team, in my opinion, because they play good team defense.
And by taking your business early, they got some of their deeper bench guys a chance to get out there and play. And Kellen Burns led them in scoring in that one. So it's always those are the nice side of kind of blowouts and games like that, where you can get guys that work hard, that don't necessarily play every single game, a chance to go out there and show that, hey, I'm a high school basketball player too, and I can play well. So that was kind of what this week was for them. Although they Millard West, they gave them battle, and they won that 53-43, their first game of the week. It was 20-6. It was tied at the first quarter. Then Gretna opened up in the second, but Millard West didn't let it get away from them. They kind of battled, and that's, you look at Millard West, their record's not good right now, but their last 5, 6, 7 games, they've been battling every single one of them. It's not an easy out at this point.
I agree. Completely agree on Millard West. They need another offensive piece that can go get a bucket, because they get bogged down offensively.
Yeah, they need shots to fall. They need guys like Zach Grangenet and Cole Kirshner, both those guys. They got to get those guys going at the same time.
Selection for Grangenet, though. Sometimes I think he settles a little bit. He can get some easier looks, but he does have to work hard on that offensive end.
And the tough part for him too is he had the wrist injury. He's got a pinky injury as well.
That against Westside.
That was messing with his shooting form. Like, he had to change his shooting form just because of the health situation there. So kind of gotten back to shooting normal recently, and he had hit 4 threes in their last game. So hopefully that bodes well for them moving forward. But Gretna's got Bryan on Tuesday and North Star on Saturday this week. So again, not necessarily elite teams, but teams that can jump up and get you if you don't come ready to play.
Coming in at number 3 is the Wednesday after school, when I picked up my 12-year-old. He gets in the car. I don't know if he does it to whatever, but Mike is a hoops head. He's a total junkie, and he gets in the car and he says, "Thoughts on the game last night after Westside got beat by the best coach in the state?" It's what he said. Not hey, how's my day? Not hey, Dad, thanks for picking me up. He hit me with the best coach in the state. You and I were joking. I don't even know how much we're really joking. Every year we say this is Coach Lutke's best job. You put it best. It's not impressive. It's not overwhelming. They make the most of their opportunities. Nobody else wants to go get it. So there's Creighton Prep sitting snug at number 3, and one of the only 2 losses that the aforementioned Gretna team has. Here's Prep again, all of a sudden sitting at 14-5.
Michael looking maybe wearing some Creighton Prep blue in the future.
Well, that's
a couple years.
Hey,
here?
So that's what he said, messing with me during his workout the other day. He's like, because he loves Coach Simons and Coach Runco, and he goes, "What if I want to go to Prep? I like to play for Coach Lutke." And I was like, "Oh, here we go." Caleb said the same thing. And then they're at the dinner table the other day, and it's like, they're both fawning over how much they love Coach Lutke. I wanted to text Josh so bad I couldn't boost his ego.
Well, I know Josh gave you a hard time when Caleb was going through that decision-making process too.
It's like, I don't know, man. I think they like to stress me out, but he is held in very high regard in the Benning family.
14-5, sitting there at number 3 in the poll. Again, you mentioned that Westside game, rivalry game, Tuesday night, 59-52. Prep pulled that out.
It's unbelievable when you watch a team control the game for probably 29 of the 32 minutes, and the last 6, you didn't feel like they could win.
So, so the Westside and then Omaha North, they beat 63-56 last week. Those like you look at the aggregate score in the third quarters, the first 3 quarters for those 2 games, it was tied going into fourth. Prep won those 2 games, the fourth quarter, 38-24.
So
finishing
good on making that designation, because people will make a lot out of the 7-point possession, but that still only made it 49-47 for Prep to take the lead over Westside. The fourth quarter was the difference. Traynell and Rishel was already doing work. But them going to the post,
so
taking advantage of matchups, that's Lutke being Coach Lutke.
So Joey Rishel finished with 25, 6-9 from 3. You cannot give him open looks. You cannot lose him. You can't give him offensive rebounds and scramble situations, because that's where they find him. He'll pull up from the volleyball line.
And he did twice. One from the corner took the lead.
So it's hard to track him down in those kind of situations. Like, you've got to secure the glass. You've got to take care of the ball. Because that's when he really gets you. Like, a lot of teams, I think, do a good job of sticking somebody with him, but it's hard to do for an entire game, particularly in those kind of broken floor situations. And then between Dylan Clausen and Trinell Parker, 19 points and 12 boards between your bigs. So you get
Trinell was so good in the post with timely baskets. He had a nice dunk. He got a technical. I wouldn't have probably called it a tech. He did a mini pull up, but it was so explosive. And
I saw it. Yeah, I don't understand why we're still doing that. Like, why does this rule exist? Like, we've got breakaway rims now. Like, I don't think kids are going to be breaking backboards.
Unless you're at Westside. but so the funny thing is, in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden they're getting paint touches, right? Because Westside finally got it figured out about, whether the confusion to ice the ball screen or to drop coverage. They don't even practice drop coverage, which is, I couldn't figure out why Richo was getting good looks from three. Like, you got to ice those ball screens to make him do something different. So once Westside kind of figured that out, it turned into Westside going in the post scoring. And Trinell Park, he was so good at feeling for where Kevin Brown or Tate was maybe putting the pressure, and he would spin the other way. And he was really crafty, and he was awful efficient.
Yeah.
If they could start to score in the post, I mean, look out, because you're going to have to find ways to get the ropes, those guys in foul trouble, the Roselles. If you're a perimeter-oriented team like Prep, you don't give yourself much of a chance. If they can score in the post with Richo, that's a different kind of team.
Well, and that's the kind of the versatility of the team, where you start with Clausen at the 5, and then you bring in Parker and play Clausen at the 4, and now it's a high-low action.
And Clausen can stretch you,
and he put it on the deck, or he can knock down the shot. So they can give you different looks based on who they have in the game, and play different ways, so they can attack you a little different ways. So that's and Parker's kind of evolution throughout the season has been kind of another good coaching point
arms
for Lutke, where he wasn't in the rotation to start the year, just a sophomore, kind of working his way up. He had some older guys there that were filling some of those minutes, and then as the season went on, I forgot which game it was, but I think Sauter was at it. I wasn't there, but gave him a chance. Like, all right, now you're just back up. Took advantage of it. I forgot what it was, but
if and he's just a sophomore, you mentioned it, and Coach Lutke is very demanding. There's an expectation. If Traynell figures out the rigor of Creighton Prep basketball day in, day out, well, his upside is pretty high. But as just a young guy in the program, I think he's kind of understanding what Coach Lutke and that staff want from him. If it clicks, he's going to be a problem.
Yeah. And then they followed that up with that win against North. Dylan Clausen, 18 and 8. Joey Richo hit 4 threes on 6 attempts, and they got production from PJ Newble and Marquise Tolliver, 9 points apiece. And then they were up 30-5 after the first quarter against Omaha South, won that thing by 31. So Prep taking care of business there. You want to touch on Westside at this point now?
Well, yeah, I mean, Westside
still hanging in at number 8, but 11-5, had a rough week, 0-2.
Yeah, running out of quality wins too, right? Yeah. You lost to Southeast, Bellevue West. I think Papio South is what I would call it's not a bad loss, but when you hold Kircher and Ball to 6 points respectively or 7 points respectively, you should win that game. It got away from them heading into the third quarter. Maul Jaw took that game over. Shepard hit some big threes. And unfortunately, being close to Westside, it's a hard criticism, but it's the reality of it. They don't shoot the ball well enough to not give maximum effort every night out, because they have too many defensive lulls.
So 5 of 30 from 3 in the 2 games combined last week. They have not shot better than 26% from 3 in their last 5.
Yeah, it's where you have to change the way you play.
They cannot get shots to fall right now, and their offense is so predicated on pace and space and trying to generate driving lanes by spacing you out, 5 out.
I think they kind of have to switch it up a little bit. The 1 gap, 2 gap thing, I understand. You need high ball screens in general. Let your guards go to work, right? Let the drive kick, the drive finish, the drive dive. You're going to have to kind of, you can't do what you're continuing to do with this offense because they don't shoot it well enough.
And they got another tough week where they
it's gonna be a good
they host Lincoln Southwest on Tuesday or tonight as we record this, and they host Elkhorn South on Friday. So again, 2 tough teams. They're going to have to figure some things out on both ends of the floor here to kind of get back on track. We mentioned Millard North earlier. 15-3. They're sitting there at number 4.
Odd team to figure out.
Yeah.
Right.
They won that grinder against Elkhorn South, 53-47 that you mentioned. And again, that was Elkhorn South was up 1 going in the 4th quarter. And then Millard North held them to 6 points in the 4th, won that thing by 6. They held Elkhorn South 0 for 9 from 3.
Isn't it interesting? You look at Millard North, they're 15-2. Their losses are
15-3.
15-3.
Yeah,
their losses are to Prep, West Side, and an out-of-state loss. Yeah. They're 15-2 in the state of Nebraska. Does it seem like we talk about Millard North like that? Maybe that's on us.
Well, they've kind of been that number 3 by default all season until the Prep loss or the West Side loss.
Yeah, which was they were never in that game.
Exactly. So that's kind of set you back. And also, I think that Derek Rollins has been their best player, just a sophomore, and kind of really good at what he does, but kind of an undersized big at this point that they play through. And then other guys are just kind of up and down, where Elijah Gate, again, we're still kind of figuring out how to be efficient in that role. If Neil Mosser isn't hitting shots, they don't have a lot of great perimeter shooting. So, like, there's a lot of things there still for them to figure out in order for you to feel great about them game to game. But they've got so many pieces there that, they've got a chance to be really good.
15-2.
Yeah.
That's it's pretty gosh dang good.
Yeah, they followed it up 69-42 win against Papu and La Vista. They outscored them 38-14 in the middle 2 quarters there. So they got 10 points out of Paxton Piatkowski off the bench there. They had 3 guys with 9, Derek Rollins with 14 and 8. So again, just good balance for that team.
Multiple generations of Piatkowskis in the gym the other night against Elkhorn South with Troy and Eric and Grandpa. It was cool to see a lot of Piatkowskis in the building watching Jace play his former team.
Yeah, and obviously Paxton.
Did I say Jace?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another the other one Piatkowski that you didn't mention.
The other Piatkowski.
And then obviously Sutton, little brothers, playing JV as a freshman there. So a lot of Piatkowskis. But it's a good balance for North. They go to Millard South on Friday, just a 1 game this week. We mentioned East. Pius is there. It's
a big win from East.
Yeah.
Right on time.
Again, it just, like we talked about who's the best in Lincoln. At this point, you got to say East. They've got a couple of losses in there, but they've got the best record. They've been the most steady. And again, you've got 2 guys that are capable of going for 30 at any given game.
But is Southeast the hottest?
Southeast and Pius right now, those 2 are the ones on a roll right now. So East at 5, Pius at 6, 12-5, coming off 54-49 win at Scott. I was at that one on Tuesday, or against Scott. I was at that one down in Lincoln on Tuesday, and man, Kellen Hum was the hero for Pius. They hit 11 threes, 11 for 23 from 3. Jake Brack had 26, 7 boards, 4 assists, and it just wasn't enough.
He's so good.
And he like head to head with Trayson Anderson. Anderson finished with 8 points, 10 rebounds.
He figured out that's a different level of physicality.
And yeah, Jake, year older, like Division I recruit, he should, but he won that battle pretty decisively. It was the other guys for Pius that won that game. Again, the 3-point shooting. Every time Scott made a run, made a push in the 3rd and 4th quarters, Pius hit a 3. and it was 3 or 4. There was a point where Trayson picked up his 4th foul, and they had Aiden Brass come in for him. Immediately hit a 3.
Yep.
Next time he touched the ball after coming in the 4th quarter. So like moments like that are just huge to pull off a win like that to hand Scott their first loss.
Big one for them coming up too, because they got to go to Kearney,
Lincoln North Star, and at Bellevue West. So that is a heck of a week for those guys. So we'll be able to test just how hot are they, how much have they grown,
and their depth and their legs. Because 3 games in a week,
especially when Bellevue West is a third of those games on the road.
Yeah, and a back-to-backer.
Yeah,
that night. So and that starts with a week where you got to go to Kearney today.
Yeah, and I saw Kearney win at Lincoln North Star on.
That's a great win, by the way.
Oh, for sure. And Jack Dahlgren's having a heck of a season for them. He can
shoot it.
They shot the lights out in that game against North Star. North Star obviously has the size there, and Lazarick Houston, man, can he get hot?
So that was all in the second half, right?
20 points second half. Did not make a shot. Went 0 for 6 in the first quarter. Didn't shoot in the second quarter. Then explodes for 20 in the fourth. Multiple 7-0, 9-0 personal runs for him. Okay. He got them back into that game.
Kind of a personal fave of mine. He's very familiar with his game, and as Coach Bronick said, it's hard to keep him in front of you.
Yeah. So, and Southeast is at 7. North Star still kind of out there receiving votes there, and Southwest is the 10th team at 9-6, coming off that loss to East, where again you had a chance to really all right, make a statement here. Couldn't get it done. They have a tough week. We mentioned they go to West Side on Tuesday. They go to Lincoln North Star on Friday, and then they're at Columbus Saturday. So 3-game week for Southwest there to kind of round out the top 10 in A.
It's a lot of good games this week, I think, in terms of that middle of the pack sorting it out.
Yeah. In Class B, we mentioned Scott took their first loss, and then they took their second loss. Doubleheader for boys girls on Friday against Omaha Central. Man, the girls down in Lincoln, they beat Pius, who was 13-2, I believe, going into that game.
Yes, sir.
And Scott just took them apart despite Taylor McCabe going 0 for 7 from 3. And then Central, man, they shot lights out. Taylor went off.
Scott girls only have the one loss.
Peyton went off, and it's out of state too.
Yeah.
They beat Elkhorn North to start the year. So, man, those Scott girls can really, and they're so young, all sophomores and juniors. But Scott, the boys though, they could kind of same deal. They lost 55-66 against Omaha Central. It was just kind of
shooting.
Yeah. And that's the problem against Scott, is where you had Bracco for 26, and then they just never really had, JJ Farron wasn't hitting, and nobody else scored. It was
points. Suffocating though. There's one thing that Central can do consistently. Their length can cause you headaches defending.
And if I'm sure they put one a guy like a Whitmamer or somebody like that on JJ Farron, made life for him as a ball handler. Now you need other guys to step up, and you're looking at Gabe Edstrand coming off an injury, just kind of easing his way back in. You've got Kyle Cannon as a sophomore, who I like, but again, it's just a sophomore playing against a Class A team. And then White Archer, who football player out there,
he's one of my faves. So I lack objectivity when it comes to Archer.
There's just not a lot of off the bounce creation for them, and I'm sure Central made it tough to get the ball into the post there. So that's kind of where you run into Scott. There aren't a lot of teams in Class B that can do that to them, I don't think. Mm-hmm. But Central did, and on offense, Whitmamer had 24 points. Central shot 9 of 12 from 3. That's
and Mamer, he's streaky.
Yeah.
I've watched him since he's been in about the 4th grade. It's not always aesthetically pleasing, but when he's playing with confidence, he can go on those little mini runs where he's shooting the basketball.
Yeah, and Central won that despite turning the ball over 18 times. So Scott goes from 14-0 to 14-2 this week, and they host Bennington on Tuesday and Mount Michael on Saturday. So we'll see if they can get back on track. That's a big one. Bennington's in there at number 3.
The only loss since the football guys came back was at Platteview, correct? Am I remembering that right? Because they've only got the 5 losses, and I think they had the 3 early.
Yeah, they had 3. They lost their first few games, and then they've been on pretty good roll since. But
I say the
they lost
guys.
to Waverly, I think.
Yeah.
And then there was one other one.
I think it's Waverly and Platteview, right? Platteview handled them pretty well.
Okay. So So that's again, you got the next best, the third best team in Class B coming to Scott, looking to kind of avoid a real losing streak here. Platteview at 2, also a rough
Bennington's
week.
dangerous.
Yeah,
they really are.
Platteview 15-3 is still at 2, but lost to Wahoo in their conference final. And that's one where
Platteview has their number.
Yeah, and well, Wahoo, it was close. It was 29-28, and then Wahoo went on a 12-0 run to pull it away, and Platteview just threw up blanks the entire fourth quarter from 3. They just could not get shots to go, and weren't able to hang around. They ended up losing the thing by 20. So impressive for Wahoo to bounce back and get that win. They had 39-21 overall in the second half. Platteview just never really got any, but Draper hit a few shots, but Connor Milken got going in the second quarter. In the second half, they really did a good job of limiting his opportunities, and nobody else could step up. They got a lot of open threes, and they didn't go in. So that's
the one thing for them,
Platteview.
if they really want to make a run here as we get to February, need another guy to be able to get in the paint, not named Connor Milliken. Right? Because, he just another downhill threat.
Yep. And so they've got Ralston on Thursday, and they go at Hastings on Saturday as well. So 2 road games this week for them. We mentioned Bennington at 3. They took care of business against Elkhorn. Trey Bird had 33 points in that one, and held Elkhorn to 33% from the field. And then they followed that up 57-40 win against Norris, played them twice in 2 weeks, this time in the EMC final, kind of same deal. Yeah. They just, it's a really tough matchup for a Norris team where you've got senior football players against a lot of freshmen, sophomores, just bigger, stronger. And so they've got tough week for Bennington. They go to Scott on Tuesday, and they go to Omaha North on Saturdays. Bennington's played a few Class A teams. They played Bellevue East as well.
And that North Bennington game could be a lot more competitive than I think people may think to the naked eye, because North's got to find a way to shoot the basketball better.
But they certainly have size and athleticism. So anytime you make a step up in class, it's tough. Crete there, still sitting there at 16-2 at number 4 this week. They swept through their conference tournament. 61 by 39 against Lexington, won by 22 against Seward, and then pulled out a close one, 51-43 at York in the final.
Let me ask you something real quick. Does that loss to Elkhorn say more about Elkhorn than Crete? Because if you look at their record and kind of how they played, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. You're like, oh, what happened to Elkhorn? But you and I both agreed, if Elkhorn figures out offensively what to do, they're not a fun team to play against either.
They're still hanging around at number 6 in the poll, despite 11-7 because of what they're capable of. But they're so up and down against some of the bad losses and the way they looked in those losses. But yeah, they can turn around and beat a team like Crete that only Scott has beat otherwise in the state. And Crete has a big one on Friday. They go to Wahoo. So that'll be a really good test for them. And for Wahoo as well. I'd expect that to be a great game. Mentioned York. They're at 5 there. They took their business and pushed Crete in the final. They go to Elkhorn North on Friday, Lakeview Saturday. Elkhorn at 6. They beat Blair in an overtime game to open their conference tournament, and then suffered that loss to Bennington, and then bounced back with a 16-point loss at Waverly, where they got really good contributions across the board. 16 from Luke Howard. Luke Howard, 26 points in their last 2 games last week.
Stealthy.
So,
doesn't say much either.
If they start to get him going a little bit as an offensive option, that definitely will help with Ethan Youngtum and Colin Comstock as kind of the mainstays there. Beatrice at 7, they avenged the loss to Ralston, won that 71-63. And then they took Platteview to double overtime, 46-47, ended up losing in that one, and then bounced back and beat Malcolm 55-43 in the last game of that tournament. So they've got Norris on Tuesday and Wahoo Saturday. So a tough week for Beatrice again. Man, Wahoo.
How about Wahoo getting Crete, and they got Crete on Friday, I think. Wahoo does.
Feels like Wahoo's played as many Class B teams as they have C1.
Right?
So credit to them for that schedule.
I'll be curious to see what happens in that Crete Wahoo game.
Definitely well tested come postseason. Mount Michael is at 8. I saw them beat South Sioux City on Thursday last week, and they did it without Chop Polger, who rolled his ankle and wasn't able to go in that one.
Who we talk about almost every week.
Yeah. So Harrison Long didn't have a great game, got off to a slow start there, but man, hit go-ahead 3. Looked like it should have been a 2, but kind of up and pump off the dribble, crossed up, pump fake. The guy jumped, head fake, stepped under, reset his feet, and knocked down the shot. And then that started a 9-0 run to kind of pull that away late in the fourth quarter. So it was a great job by Elkhorn there against a much improved South Sioux City team. Anthony Earth, transfer from Winnebago, he went over 1,000 points at South Sioux in that game. And Manny Paul was a difference maker.
And
15,
South Sioux
10,
sitting
4
right
blocks.
at 9-7.
And they cracked the poll at
Top
number 10. Yeah. So they've got Sioux City West this week and Roncalli on Saturday. So Roncalli, that's a good win, who's sitting there at number 9. They've got Ralston and South Sioux City this week to bounce back after a 47-50 loss against Gross last week.
Are we getting any Ralston scouting reports? I mean, I'm sitting next to a guy that may know a thing or two about Ralston basketball.
Yeah, my brother's been asking me to come. I'm going to go to one of those games for Ralston this week, either the Platteview on Thursday or Roncalli on Friday. They definitely got some pieces. Deacon Courtney's having a really good sophomore year for them. Rex Butenbeck, coach's son, had 35 in their loss to Beatrice last week. Max Hoffman is capable. Had 23, I think, in their win against Beatrice, or one of their wins the previous week. So they've got a few guys. And Rendell Gines, who transferred from Omaha Christian Academy, just went over 1,000 career points recently for them as well. So
Rex was such an easy kid to cheer for when he was younger. I hope continues to be that guy, because he was so good natured.
Yeah. Quick results in Class C1. It's mostly chalk. Everybody took care of business except for Concordia, took their second loss. They lost to Lincoln Lutheran on Friday. So that's a really good win for Lutheran. And
who cracks the top 10 now?
Won by 14 in that one. So Concordia fell to 6, but otherwise like top 5 still. We talked about how good it is. Auburn still hanging around there at 7 at 12-4, Wayne at 8, and then O'Neill 12-3. They're at 9 since Landon Klassen missed a couple of games. He's been back. They've been steadily rising. How about this for Klassen?
I was just getting ready to say he's probably going to make our performances of note in the past week, and here we go.
42 points on 15-27 shooting, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 6 steals, 2 assists.
We got to see them
against Wilcox Hildreth.
Seriously,
I think we'll have a chance to see them come March here, based on the way they've been playing lately, and between Klassen and Morrow as a dynamic duo there for them. But they followed that up with they had 20 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds in his first game of the week against a 3-point win against a good Norfolk Catholic team. So good week for O'Neill there. Class C2, the changeup was Freeman is back up at number 1 after Hardington Cedar Catholic dropped to 3 with a loss. They're sitting at 13-3. Donovan Trumbull is still sitting there at 17-0, holding at number 2. So teams jumped Freeman back up to, or coaches jumped Freeman back up to number 1. So that's kind of the result of note in C2. And then we'll close it out with the shout outs this week. I already mentioned Klassen. How about Gearing Senior Maxwell Greeley? 37 points, 13-19 shooting, 5 of 6 from 3, 6 of 8 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals in a 13-point win at Alliance. Wilcox Hildreth Jr. Grayson Sheen, 30 points, 11-21 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3, 6 of 8 from the free throw line, 19 rebounds, 5 steals, 1 assist in a 5-point win at Franklin. So they need every bit of that performance there to get that win. Luke Caston, senior for Potter Dix, who has had a really prolific career. He had a 31-point game this past week, 8 steals, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, one block, really efficient from the field. Didn't have a great offensive game, but still had 12 points, 14 rebounds, and 8 steals and 5 assists in their other game last week. And then finally, Pawnee City sophomore Anthony Kling, 27 points, 11-22 shooting, 4-10 from 3, 17 rebounds, 5 steals, and 3 assists in a 20-point win against Lewiston.
Yeah, I tell you what, you're not going to get that anywhere, right? Where you just get like the quick rundown of folks that are very deserving. That's why he's so good at what he does. That's Jacob Padilla. And I'm happy I get to glean a little basketball from him.
By the way,
that's my guy.
By the way, Stevie Nicks, Tom Petty, stop dragging my heart around to bring it all back
Wow.
around.
Shane just over here laying in the cut. That's the great one, Jacob Padilla. I'm old DB. We'll be back next week with Nebraska Preps post game. Plenty of good matchups. Don't you dare miss it.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.